The next talk we're going to have up here is from the gentleman Tejinder Basi. Hope I pronounced the name correctly. And he's going to be here talking to you today about risk and the blockchain and about the organization, the Blockchain Intelligence Group. So big hand of applause, please. Tejinder Basi.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, come on in, guys. I haven't seen such big lineups since I was at Disneyland, so those of you who stood in the lineup, thank you for your patience, and there's still a big lineup down there, so consider yourself lucky. Thank you for the introduction. My name's Tejinder Basi. I'm a Director of Strategy with the Blockchain Intelligence Group. I spent half my life here in beautiful England and half my life in Canada, just the way it worked out. But I do love coming back, and one of my favorite things to do is visit London, visit my family, and of course, I love to chat with cabbies. So, interesting story this morning. We got into a cab, and the guy's like, well, where do you want to go? And we said, the Crypto Investors Show. He's like, really? He says, I don't want anything to do with crypto. I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like, this is a huge opportunity ahead of us. He goes, no, you guys are scamsters. Every crypto there is a scam. And then he went on to say, well, there's actually financing of terrorism, there's financing of drug crime, and there's all kinds of money sloshing around the system that shouldn't be sloshing around, taking away from us good guys. And you know, I was actually quite surprised around his comments. He actually almost threw us out of the cab because he didn't like us. But what I said to him is, look, you know, you're talking to the company that actually solves these issues. So Blockchain Intelligence Group, we are in the business of stopping the criminals. We've actually done cases where we've been able to track and trace and monitor cryptocurrency that's associated with the bad guys. Not only that, we've been able to gather the evidence that's required to put them where they belong. So again, there's a huge opportunity for us, but unless we eradicate some of this crime and what's going on, cryptocurrency will never become mainstream. And so we're really here to allow the system to evolve in the way that it ought to evolve, to allow the economy to grow the way it ought to grow. And we have a set of unique tools that, again, I'll share with you a little bit, give you a bit of a glimpse today, that allow us to move crypto into mainstream. So how many people are here looking for an IPO investment? A few of you, well, quite a number of you. And how many of you are just to hear and learn about cryptocurrency, what it's all about, tokenization, etc.? Yeah, it's quite a few. Good. Well, I can tell you we're at the tip of an iceberg. This is a great place to be in this market. And I would certainly encourage you to really educate yourselves, learn about what's going on. You know, there's good investments, there's a lot of bad investments, but the world is going to evolve over the next few years. And I'll explain why. I'll explain where we're going so you get a pretty broad context. And then I'll just spend a few minutes on the tools that Blockchain Intelligence Group brings. Okay? You have the clicker? So, just so everybody's clear, we're not an IPO. We're not issuing tokens. We're not an IPO. We're not an ICO. Sorry. We are an IPO. So we went public December of 2017. We're listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange as well as a few other exchanges. And the ticker symbol is BIGG. So BIGG is our name. So please feel free to look it up. And because we're a public company, I have to make a disclaimer. So I'm sure you can read that. No, in a nutshell, everything that I say, especially about future predictions, it's really my personal opinion. It's not the opinion of the company. And in no shape or form am I giving any sort of investment advice. So again, public company, keep that in mind. So, as I mentioned, we're in a phenomena where we've got this amazing opportunity ahead of us. So cryptocurrency is on the rise. At this point, the total value of all the tokens that are in the crypto system is worth $360 billion. So 360 billion, that's basically, you put the top 25 companies in the S&P index together and it's bigger. So, and it's growing daily. So we have this huge phenomenon. So what's driving it? What's driving this growth? Well, we're actually currently in the speculation phase. So we got a lot of speculators that are saying, let's fuel this, let's get in, let's make some bucks. A lot of people want to get in and sell on the same day and then they're out. Some people are in there for longer. But there's a bigger phenomena that's happening right now that's actually going to change our industry and how we do business. And that's the whole advantage of blockchain. Blockchain has certain properties that enterprises are just starting to realize. So as we talk to banks, as we talk to governments, as we talk to regulators, they're starting to take advantage not of the Bitcoin, so let's be careful, there's cryptocurrency, but there's underlying technology called blockchain, by the way, that needs a public ledger for it to function properly, that's now starting to be taken advantage of. So we're moving into the mainstream. You'll see a lot of changes happening in the next 2 years, and a lot of these underlying capabilities will still be required. So our thesis in our organization is that we will be around because the exchange of value will be around, the use of the public blockchain will be around for a whole number of other reasons. So we're really providing the picks and shovels as this whole phenomena evolves. So a great opportunity, but it does, like with any opportunities, as we saw in the 80s and 90s with the web, it doesn't come without risks. So what are the risks? So in terms of scamming, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So investors have been scammed to the tune of 225 million last year, and I suspect that figure will continue to grow. But the ecosystem continues to grow. I mean, look at how many companies are exhibiting here. And so we're seeing a whole bunch of new entrants into the ecosystem, no different to what we saw in the dot-com boom. And I guarantee you in 10 years' time, there'll be a huge amount of consolidation. Few organizations will survive, majority of them will disappear. So I've talked about the opportunity. Now let's take a little bit of a trip down to the dark side and figure out what's really happening here. So there is that scamming, which is just the tip of the iceberg. There's actually sale of illicit goods. So who's heard of fentanyl? So there's a huge drug of crisis, fentanyl and carfentanil. A lot of it is being, tracks are being hidden by using cryptocurrency to finance that. As well as terrorism financing. Ransomware, I think majority of you may have heard about. These are all, unfortunately, cryptocurrency has some great properties, but when it gets into the hands of the bad guys, this is the kind of stuff that they can attempt to do. And I say attempt to do because now there are tools to actually track and trace this stuff. So let's talk about regulators and compliance. So why aren't the regulators stepping in? And why aren't they protecting the investor? Why aren't they just jumping in and solving this problem about crime? Well, we talk to regulators on a daily basis. We've hired the former head of Homeland Security illicit crime. He's on our team. And what we've been told is that they just need the tools to help them to get there. So we have traditional tools to look at fiat, but we haven't matured the tools to really do proper tracking and tracing. And that's the business we're in. So as we speak to Homeland Security, Department of Justice, US agencies, and then further afield across the world, they're telling us that these are the tools that they were hoping that they could get their hands on, and in fact are starting to solve crimes with these tools. On the compliance side, when we talk to banks and we talk to regulators, one thing they recognize is this is actually a boom for our economy. So they actually don't want to dampen the liquidity that this is generating in the market, so it generates huge liquidity. It enables a whole bunch of innovation. They do not want to come down and just stamp it all out, but they're starting to think about regulation. So the G20 are getting together. They'll be talking specifically around cryptocurrency and regulation. The banks are getting together, talk about what kind of regulation they can provide. And again, underlying the regulation and the ability to enforce that regulation, they will need certain sets of tools and capabilities. So our motto at Blockchain Intelligence Group is really to bring security and accountability to crypto. We feel that as long as there's sufficient accountability and security around crypto, that the world itself will become a better place. We'll be able to use crypto without worrying about all the nefarious things that it's used for. And in fact, if we do this right, we'll actually reduce the amount of drug trafficking, murder for hire, terrorism financing that's going on. So there's a bigger cause here, and everyone in our team has this attachment to the bigger cause. So I sort of share that with you in terms of our sort of moral obligation in society. It goes way beyond, looking at the scammers and so on. So that's really what we're about. Just a quick history. So the team that we have, the technical team, has been at this for well over 10 years. The product that they developed and is in the market right now, they actually started in 2013. So they've been at it for a long time. And because of that, it's actually relatively mature. The heart of the product is really in the search and analytics space. And when you apply it to blockchain, you get a very, very rapid response and an ability to track, trace, and monitor across the entire ecosystem, the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so the problems we're trying to solve is really, how do we gather enough evidence? How do we do transaction risk assessment? But here's the trick. We need to do it in real time. There's no point retailers like Amazon, Tesla, all of these companies that are starting to accept Bitcoin, there's no point them waiting 10 minutes before they can assess the risk of that transaction. So we need to have this done in real time. Here's a trick question. So how many retailers are there in London that accept Bitcoin? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Well then, this guy gets a prize. Come to our booth. He said 100. It's very close to 100 that are accepting, and there's a whole bunch of pubs in there, so I'm like, this is great, that are starting to accept Bitcoin. Obviously, in terms of the risks around that, and where that Bitcoin's come from, has it been used in illicit crime? They're not really concerned about it at this point. They're not made aware of it. However, if you are an enterprise, not only are you going to have to deal with that from a risk and a conscious standpoint, you're going to have to deal with it from a compliance and obligation standpoint. How many people have heard of AML compliance and OFAC compliance? So there's a few. So anti-money laundering compliance requires banks and financial institutions to check for any money laundering activity, because it's a way of trying to stamp that out. It's starting to become effective, but it's been a huge challenge. And I believe in the crypto space, it is a huge challenge. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we deal with AML compliance? And ultimately, because Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies allow you to do peer-to-peer transactions, we really need to identify, well, how do we actually track those things? And again, when I say track, it has to be within the context of the law. So privacy, GDPR, all these other aspects you have to take into account. You can't just go and survey everything. We know, like in Europe, that's a pretty sensitive issue. So I will just give you a brief glimpse on our solution. The first part of our solution is called BitRank. And what BitRank does is, in real time, if you give it a wallet address, it'll come back and give you a score as to the health of that wallet. And the health of that wallet is gauged on, historically, where has the wallet transacted. So has the wallet transacted on the dark web? To what extent? Has there been any exit points? So it gathers a whole bunch of data from our ongoing continuous database, and it gives you a score. And the nice thing is, the score is pretty easy to understand. So if you come back with green on that wallet score, you're probably okay to accept that currency, and you know it hasn't been used in nefarious ways. If it's a red, clearly that's a danger sign saying, look, we can confirm with a high degree of probability that this is a wallet that you should be concerned about. Very easy to use. And I'll show you a couple of screenshots, but one of the ways you can use this is actually tie in with an API. So you can do an API call, and within seconds, and we can do 70 billion lookups in a month, within a second, you'll get the score back. So that's the first part of the product. The second part of the product, you may say, well, that's interesting, we get a score, but we want to actually find out more. We want to know where this wallet's been. If you're an investigator, where's the wallet been? Who is it transacted with? And how do we gather enough evidence so that we can convict these criminals? And that's the second product clue. And because we're running out of time, what I'm going to suggest is you note the number 27. So 27 is our booth, but I'll give you a quick glimpse into the product. But please come by and we can give you a full demonstration at booth 27. So this is the first product that I mentioned, BitRank. As you type in the address, you'll immediately get a score. Now this score is 0. So once you get a 0, you might wonder, well, why is this a 0? You actually get a rationale behind it. So in this case, it's giving you a red. It's saying, do not transact here. And in this case, it was actually the sharing of pornography obviously for Bitcoin and for value. And so you can actually then scroll down and get a whole bunch of additional information on this. What you cannot get is the name of the wallet holder. Why is that? Breaches privacy law, right? So that's an important distinction. Now, we can actually help you to identify who it is, but we wouldn't do that without an official legal document or a subpoena from the law enforcement agencies. When you switch to the other product, Clue, this actually gives you a brief glimpse into the fact that we're actually monitoring not just one wallet, two wallets, we're monitoring the entire ecosystem of wallets. And what you see here in real time is the health of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So the higher the score, the healthier the Bitcoin ecosystem is. You've got the number of nodes that are online. For those that are technically inclined would know the definition of nodes. You also have the number of Tor nodes that are active in the Bitcoin system. And for those of you who know a little bit about cybersecurity, Tor nodes are those that are associated with the dark web. So we consistently, on an ongoing basis, monitor dark web and other activity so that we could really identify what wallets are doing what and which ones are associated with the dark web. There's a lot of other information here, average transaction per block and so on. I won't get into that, but the other thing that's useful for investigators, anyone that's kind of looking into this area, is what's the latest news. So this is latest industry news that's given to you. This is the latest dark web news that's given to you as well. So again, when we speak to law enforcement, we speak to Homeland Security and others, they love this because it's a dashboard where they can go in and get educated on what's currently going on, what kind of criminal activity is going on. Now, obviously, it's pretty high level, so they may want to drill down. So here's another example where you basically can put in the address and find out that this is a scam. So, okay, it's a scam. So how do I find out more? Well, you've got a graphic display of how that scam took place and the association of those wallets. And when you click on here, I'll just wrap up in a couple of minutes. This gives you an illustration of how easy it is to visually navigate through the ecosystem so you can actually identify not just the bad guys, but their association and so on. And what we're looking for, what the investigators are looking for is exit points. Because once you transfer cryptocurrency to fiat, or you go to an exchange, or you go to an ATM, that's when you start to gather the evidence. So an example was where there was a video camera, the fellow was withdrawing from an ATM on a consistent basis, and we were able to attach that evidence to exactly what was going on in the ecosystem. So this is your cluster of wallets, and we've got clustering heuristics and AI in the background that's helping you. It's identified as a scam. There's a number of exit points here. There's another mixer over here. So as you can see, very detailed information. You can just drill down and identify exactly how this crime is being performed. So this is a dream come true for investigators, anyone that's in investigation. But not only that, when banks need to basically retain evidence as to why they accepted or didn't accept certain crypto, they can actually use this to capture it as well. So you can use it in multiple ways. So again, unfortunately, I am out of time, otherwise I'd get into more detail. But I would encourage you to come to booth 27. It's just across the way in the other exhibit hall, and we can certainly give you a full demo. So my name's Tejinder Basi. I thank you for your attention today, and I'm with the Blockchain Intelligence Group, ticker symbol BIGG. Thank you very much.